Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're tackling a really significant issue in workers' compensation, this growing problem, with litigation. Our guide for this is a recent piece from Healthy Systems concerning counsel, a look at litigation and workers' comp.
And it's definitely more than just like a minor headache for the industry. People are genuinely worried. That 2025 survey they did, it found over 61% of participants said litigation was their #1 challenge.
61%, wow.
Yeah, and that's a big jump from the year before. It really signals, a serious concern about claims getting costlier, more complex.
Exactly. So our mission today, essentially, is to try and figure out why this is happening. We'll look at the data, see when lawyers tend to get involved, and explore what makes an injured worker decide to get legal help.
Right. Understanding this part of the system that can, well, really add costs and delays.
Okay, let's unpack it. What's the data actually telling us? How does attorney involvement change things?
Well, the evidence, it pretty strongly suggests a major impact, both on how long claims take and how much they cost in the end. There was a 2018 study, for example. It found claims with lawyers involved. They dragged on way longer.
How much longer?
A median of 901 days. Compare that to just 305 days without a lawyer.
901 days, that's a massive difference. And it's not just the time, right? The costs must go up too.
Oh, absolutely. There's a more recent study, 2024, from the WCRI, that's the Workers' Compensation Research Institute. They looked at almost 1 million claims across 31 states. Pretty comprehensive.
And what did they find?
They found that when an attorney gets involved, the total payments on that claim jump by somewhere between $7,700 and $12,400.
Wow.
So yeah, the clear takeaway is lawyer-involved claim gets substantially more expensive, period.
That's a huge leap in cost. Did that WCRI study find anything else significant?
It did. It also showed a dramatic increase, 284% in lost time days when attorneys were part of the picture. And expense payments, those shot up by 200%.
So basically, every key metric just escalates.
Pretty much. It really highlights the scale of the impact.
Okay, so the costs, both time and money, seem clear. Now, the Concerning Counsel article also asks if attorney involvement is actually, increasing overall. What's the story there?
That's where it gets a little murky. It's kind of a mixed bag. That same WCRI study, it found 34% of workers with more than 7 days off work hired attorneys. But then another 2024 study showed overall attorney representation at 26%, which is actually down a bit from 29% in 2020.
Interesting. So maybe fewer people overall are lawyering up, but the cases that do involve lawyers are getting more complex, more expensive.
That's definitely one possibility. And, the Healthy Systems article makes a good point. The data often lags. So if there's been a more recent surge, we might not be seeing it fully reflected in these numbers just yet.
Good point. Data lag is always a factor. Now, Concerning Counsel also stresses that this isn't the same everywhere, right? It varies quite a bit state by state.
Oh, definitely. How often you see litigation in workers' comp really depends on the state. You've got different laws, different ways claims are handled, different industries, demographics, even sort of cultural attitudes towards lawsuits play a part.
The article mentions California and New York. They have reputations for being pretty litigious, sort of lawyer-friendly. Does the data back that up?
Well, they do tend to have higher rates, yeah. Both are in the top 10 states for attorney involvement. But interestingly, neither was actually in the top 5, according to the data in the Healthy Systems piece.
So perception and reality aren't perfectly aligned there.
Exactly. It shows you need to look beyond just reputation.
Okay, and what about just the sheer number of lawyers in a state? Does having more lawyers per person automatically mean more workers' comp litigation?
Apparently not. There's a sidebar chart in Concerning Counsel that shows there isn't a clear direct link. Like, New Jersey has the highest rate of attorney involvement, but it's not the highest for attorneys per capita. Yeah, and New York. Tons of lawyers per capita, but it doesn't top the list for workers' comp attorney involvement. It's quite surprising.
That is a surprising disconnect. Okay, the article also mentions attorney fees. Could that be a driver? How much lawyers can charge?
It's certainly a potential factor, and yeah, how states regulate those fees varies a lot. For instance, New Jersey caps fees, I think, is at 25% of the award. New York uses a schedule, maxing out at 15% of benefits. California is around 9–12%, but it needs board approval. So you could see how those different structures might incentivize things differently for attorneys.
Makes sense. Okay, so big impact varies by state. Let's dig into the types of claims. Where are we most likely to see lawyers? What kind of cases?
Right. Well, the data is pretty clear here. Attorneys are much more common when there are disputes, obviously, or when there's more money, more benefits at stake. Concerning counsel points out, like 64% of claims involving permanent partial disability or lump sums had lawyers,
64%. Compared to what for simpler claims?
compared to only 14% for temporary disability claims.
Okay, so permanent partial disability, that means a permanent issue, but the worker can still do some work, right?
Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
bigger potential payouts, higher stakes, more lawyers involved. Makes sense.
And what about the injury itself? Does the type of injury matter?
It seems to. The article mentions 61% representation for neurologic spine pain. That's complex, often long-term stuff. Compare that to only 22% for things like cuts or bruises, lacerations, contusions.
So, more serious, potentially more debilitating injuries tend to attract more legal attention.
That seems to be the pattern.
Are there employment-related factors too, like how long someone's been at a job?
Yes, actually. Workers with longer tenure, say 10 years or more, are less likely to hire attorneys. Maybe more trust built up, or perhaps they feel more secure.
Interesting. And industry.
Industry matters too.
Hmm.
Construction claims, for example, see higher attorney involvement rates compared to, say, clerical or professional jobs.
Okay, maybe higher risk of serious injury or perhaps different workplace dynamics. So, WCRI identified a few key factors then. Disability status, injury type, industry, tenure, age.
Right, those are the main ones associated with higher likelihood of attorney involvement.
Okay, now let's get to maybe the most important question. Why? Why are injured workers actually picking up the phone and calling a lawyer? Concerning counsel mentions some industry views, like opportunistic attorneys or TV ads.
Yeah, and while those might be factors some stakeholders see, the WCRI study that actually asked thousands of workers gives us, I think, a clearer picture from their perspective.
Right. What did the workers themselves say? What were their top reasons?
Okay, the top three were pretty revealing. First, fear of being fired because they got injured. Second, worrying their supervisor didn't believe their claim was legitimate. And third, just the belief that their claim had been denied.
Wow, those all sound like they come from a place of fear, mistrust, maybe feeling vulnerable.
Exactly. And the difference between those with attorneys and those without on these points was stark. Well, like 48% of workers with attorneys feared being fired. Only 13% of those without lawyers felt that way. 42% with lawyers felt their supervisor doubted them versus just 15% without. And believing the claim was denied. 46% with attorneys, only 16% without.
That's significant. Okay, beyond those core fears, job loss, doubt, denial, what other things push workers toward legal help? Concerning counsel listed quite a few.
Oh, yeah. A huge one is just the system itself being so darn complex. Difficulty navigating workers' comp. Both industry folks and workers agree on this. Healthy Systems found over half their survey participants felt this way.
And that complexity even makes some people delay reporting their injury. That's worrying.
It really is. If you're hurt and the process seems overwhelming, you might hesitate. And that delay, well, it can definitely make things worse later on.
For sure. What else?
Lack of communication is big. Feeling neglected by the employer or just getting form letters from the insurer or adjuster instead of, real human contact. People are worried about their health, their income. They need clear personal communication.
And confusing information probably adds to the stress, too.
Absolutely. Conflicting info from different sources just makes people feel lost and like they need someone to sort it out for them. Then there's the worry about losing health insurance, which is huge, and delays or denials of medical treatment. That was a top reason for 40% in the Healthy Systems survey.
40% citing treatment issues as the top reason. Wow.
Plus, delays in getting paid, those indemnity benefits replacing wages, and even things like pre-existing dissatisfaction with the employer or not being offered modified duty work. It all contributes.
It paints a picture of workers feeling scared, confused, unsupported.
Exactly, feeling like they need an advocate in their corner.
So, given all that, what can actually be done? Concerning counsel admits some things are outside of payers' control.
That's true. You can't easily change state laws or the type of injury someone has or how they felt about their boss before they got hurt. But the article really stresses that payers can influence things by focusing on the worker's experience, building trust.
And it offers some concrete tips, right? Things employers and insurers can actually do.
Yes, proactive communication is key. Reaching out early, showing empathy, explaining the process clearly, that can make a world of difference. Making communication easy is another one, using channels people actually use, like their phones, mobile messaging.
Instead of just formal letters.
Right. Also, automating routine stuff so claims staff can actually spend time on the tricky cases, the ones needing more personal attention. Making sure approvals and authorizations happen quickly and correctly. Delays there are a huge frustration point.
That makes sense. Prevent those trigger.
Exactly. And using analytics to spot potential risks early. Maybe identify claims likely become complex and intervene sooner. Oh, and choosing vendors and partners, carefully making sure everyone interacting with the injured worker is focused on a positive experience.
So it really sounds like it comes down to, well, the human element. Building trust, being clear, making the process less scary and confusing.
I think that's the core message.
Yeah.
Yes, litigation is a concern. It's costly, it's complex, it's driven by system factors, claim specifics, but also very much by how injured workers feel treated, how they perceive the whole process.
And a lot of those feelings, the fear, the frustration, the confusion, seem potentially preventable with better communication and support.
Exactly. While you can't control everything, there are definitely actionable steps employers and insurers can take. Focusing on that worker's journey, building trust, that seems to be the path forward to potentially reduce litigation.
Which really brings us to a final thought for you, the listener.
Yeah, think about that human element in workers' comp. How much could a stronger focus on empathy, on clear communication actually change things? Not just reducing legal costs, but maybe improving outcomes, making the whole experience better for everyone. What small changes, could stop an injured worker feeling like they have to call a lawyer? Definitely something worth pondering.